Welcome to the Teaching Autism and Special Education Community Podcast. Hi, I'm Nikki, a passionate special educator, autism advocate, resource creator with over a decade of experience, and you may know me as the face behind Teaching Autism. This podcast is your go-to place for practical tips, hands-on strategies, and inspiring and funny stories to support special educators all around the world, whether it's building independence, creating engaging lessons, or finding that elusive work-life balance. I'm here to help you thrive inside and outside of the classroom. Let's dive into today's episode and make a difference together. Hi friends, and welcome back to the Teaching Autism and Special Education podcast. My name is Nikki, and you may also know me as the face behind Teaching Autism. Today we're diving into something that can feel really confusing and honestly quite frustrating as well, and that is when a student appears to deliberately mess up their own work when they could succeed, but they just don't let themselves. And instead of labeling it as self-sabotage in this sort of dramatic way, what I want us to do today is look at what's actually happening underneath that behavior, because I'm hoping that once you start to understand the function, this will stop feeling so personal and emotional, and it's going to start feeling like it's solvable. So let's dive right in. First up, I want us to reframe sabotage. Children are not wired to destroy their own success for fun or no reason. If a student is interfering with their own progress, then there is a reason. And the most common reasons are fear of failure, fear of success, perfectionism, shame, executive overload, anxiety, and even loss of control. So very, very rarely is this random. It is almost always protective. So let's dive into some functions. Function number 1, protection from failure. If I don't try properly, then I didn't fail. If I scribble it, rush it, or tear it up, then my mistakes don't count. For students who have experienced some repeated academic struggles, or maybe public correction, or even comparison, success can actually feel really risky. Because if I try and get it wrong, that confirms the fear. But if I mess it up on purpose, that feels safer. It's confusing, but this is actually really common in students who say things like, I'm bad at this, I can't do it, this is dumb. It's not an attitude problem. Again, it's self-protection. And that's kind of the theme that these podcast episodes are going with recently if you've been tuning in week after week. Now, function number 2 is the fear of success. And this one surprises people. Success can increase expectation. And if you listened to my last podcast episode last week, you may already have some information about this that we were talking about. For a student, it can feel like if I do well once, now I have to keep doing well. And if I get praised, now I'm visible. And if the teacher notices I'm capable, the demands might increase even more. So some of your students will actually unconsciously keep themselves in a predictable zone. If I stay just under the radar, I don't get any extra pressure. And this links beautifully with what I was saying, what we talked about in the praise episode last week. Success can raise the spotlight, but the spotlight can actually raise anxiety. Function number 3 is perfectionism and shame. So some students would actually rather destroy their work than let you see something imperfect. So you may see this when they rip up work that has one small mistake, or maybe they refuse to hand it in, or they might erase over it obsessively and shut down when corrected. Perfectionism is often anxiety in sort of disguise. So the biggest driving force behind this is shame. And if their internal voice is saying, if it's not perfect, it's wrong, then ripping it up feels like control for that student. Function number 4 is executive function collapse. So sometimes what looks like sabotage is actually overload. So that student has used up all of their working memory, their attention, their emotional regulation to get to that point. And when they're nearly finished, this is when their nervous system takes over and says, that's it, we are done. And instead of calmly stopping, it spills out like water overflowing from a cup. It can look like knocking things over, refusing the final step, becoming silly, even suddenly forgetting how. And it's not them being dramatic, it's just that their capacity has reached its limit. And finally, function number 5 is regaining control. Work often represents adult direction. So think of things like expectations, structure, evaluation. And if a student feels out of control and powerless in other areas, then controlling the outcome of their work is going to give them back some of that feeling of power and control. So they'll be thinking things like, if I ruin this, you can't control this. And it's not malicious, it's autonomy trying to surface in the only way that it knows how. Now, some things that I want you not to do, because when we see this behavior, our instinct usually kicks in and we say things like, fine, let's start again. Why would you do that? You were doing so well. Now you've wasted all that time and you have to do it again. But all of those responses are actually negative and increase shame for our students. And then that shame increases the need to protect. So you can see where we're going with this. It's a vicious circle and that increases the behavior. Here is your cycle and that's what we want to avoid. So some things that I want you to do instead and some practical things that you can put into place today. 1, I want you to lower the emotional intensity. Stay calm, a neutral tone, no visible disappointment. 2, I want you to separate the child from the work. That page didn't go how you wanted to. That's okay. 3, I want you to reduce the demands slightly. So instead of redoing everything, restart with one small step. 4, I want you to normalize mistakes. Show your own messy drafts. Model correcting errors without the panic. 5, I want you to watch for patterns. Does this happen near completion or after praise, after correction, after comparison? Because patterns tell you the function. And finally, number 6, offer controlled choices. You can fix that part or we can move on. It's your choice. This is restoring that autonomy safely and giving them some control back as well. Now, if you're looking for some gentle language you can use, because I love to always make down notes and take things away with me, especially if I'm stuck for words one day, here are some you can use. 1, I wonder if finishing felt tricky. 2, you got really close and that can feel really big. 3, sometimes when things go well, it can feel a bit uncomfortable. And 4, we can try again in a smaller way if you want. So what you're doing is you're not excusing the behavior, because that's what a lot of people assume when I'm talking about these things, is that we're excusing the behavior and we're accepting it. That's not the case here. What we're doing is supporting their capacity and their regulation and giving them the tools to move forward from this as well. So a little teacher pep talk, because I love to add these into my podcast episodes. If you have ever felt defeated, upset, disappointed, even just sort of lost for words, watching a student undo their own progress, I see you. It can feel like all your effort just got thrown away. But often that moment isn't actually about disrespect. It's about fear. And when we respond with calm containment instead of frustration, we interrupt the shame cycle. And over time, that is going to build resilience in our students. So When students sabotage their own work, you need to look at what they might be protecting themselves from. So I want you to think of things like failure, pressure, shame, a loss of control, and even just complete overwhelm and overload. Because underneath a ripped page and a scribbled answer and a ruined piece of work is usually just a nervous system trying to find ways to make it feel safe again. I hope you found today's podcast episode helpful and you're able to take away some little bits of information to put into practice with your students now and in the future as well. Thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon.